Hello, everybody, and welcome to Jack's Corner. I'm Tarzan Bonanno, and with me, as always, is our founder, Jack Figgle. Jack, how you doing today?
Good, Tarzan. Glory to Jesus Christ.
Glory to him forever. So we're supposed to talk about a little bit more of what we talked about last week with all the things that are in the Orientale Lumen world. Last week we talked about the adult enrichment. Today, we're talking about the other things that you have ideas for that are coming and other things that we've put behind the scenes. So, what do you want to start with
Great.
telling the people?
All right. Well, the other things that OLT has done over the years have included recording the plenary sessions at Oriental Lumen conferences themselves. And so we have 6 to 8 talks by different speakers rather than the AE packages, which are usually one speaker on a given topic. There's also the collection of the 3 seminary choir concert tours that Oriental Lumen hosted over the last 10 years from the 2 seminaries in Eastern Europe of the Ruthenians, from Prešov and from Užhorod. And the other items are, in particular, include special liturgies at different places of the world, at different events, different occasions, and a few other special sort of one-off things. So I'll talk about each of those a little bit, and maybe we can dig deeper into any given one that you might want to talk about. The OL plenaries, which are simply the individuals who come as speakers that we put on the program for Orientale Lumen, that actually started with the very first conference, where I had the vision, I guess, that these were going to be important and we wanted to have an archive of them. And so I actually recorded the first Orientale Lumen conference with a little cassette tape player. If you remember, in fact, they may even date before you were born. But
Yeah, well, I mean, we've talked about cassettes, and you know that I have a bunch of devices over here for them. They
yeah,
are them and vinyls are like my most listened to form of audio.
oh, okay. So I have audio tape recordings from the very, very first Oriental Lumen conference. After the third one, there was a family from the Midwest, the Northrops, who offered to record our conferences, and then they sold the cassette tapes at the conference. And then that evolved into making videotapes and video recordings after we got away from the audio things. And the first video we made at an Oriental Lumen conference was done by a commercial videographer, where I had Bishop Andrew Pataki was celebrating Divine Liturgy in the Basilica Crypt Church. We had Cardinal Cassidy from Rome as one of our speakers. And so we sort of pulled out all the stops. I got the men's choir from my church to sing the responses. And so we had a nice big full throated Byzantine liturgy, and we recorded it with just one camera, but we had a camera and an audio engineer. So we got a really good quality show out of it. And after that, the Northrops then brought multiple video cameras with them, and we got multiple angles. After about 15 years of that, and the development of me buying my own little handy cams and learning how to shoot and edit video myself, the Northrops no longer had to be involved, and I start making my own. And now we've got it down to a science of setting up the cameras, turning them on, and then a few weeks after a conference, I turned them into the recordings of the speaker. And now for the last 4 years, where we've had a virtual Oriental Lumen conferences all on Zoom, everything is video recorded, including this last year when we did a tribute to Metropolitan Callistos of blessed memory, the plenary sessions were actually him in his own voice talking about all sorts of different topics. And then our panel discussed his videos. So the whole thing has evolved from cassette tapes where I pushed the button on the podium to start the record to where everything was video, even the conference itself. So we've gone through quite a metamorphosis of that.
Yeah, I mean, times definitely have changed. He was the first person, right? He was the first person involved in all of this, and now
Yeah.
the last conference so far was all about him, almost full circle.
All about him. That's right. That's right. Yeah, the first conference would not have happened without him having agreed to be a speaker, and then the efforts I had to go through to make sure he came. I think we've talked about that in the past.
Yes, you had to basically offer him first class,
Yeah, that's right. With the masseuse,
which he did not take.
which he did not take. That's right. Yeah, not to put anything into Metropolitan Calistos's history but yeah, he did not avail himself of the masseuse on the airplane, which I would have certainly.
Well,
The other special events that we've used video and now make available through video and audio are the seminary choir concert tours. About 10 or 12 years ago, I had this idea to build a bridge between the Ruthenian Church in Europe and the Ruthenian Church in America by way of having more people visit back and forth. And I discussed it with all sorts of folks, and we came to a conclusion that the seminarians in Europe had a very good choir singing church Slavonic hymns and liturgies from the Ruthenian Church tradition, and that it would really, really be a great education experience for them to come to America, number one. It would be a great education experience for our parishes in America to see the seminarians in Europe, most of which, or almost all of which, were going to be married at some point, and also to reestablish a little bit the singing tradition and the church Slavonic of the Ruthenian Church through having these choirs come and visit the parishes. So I put together a proposal, financed the first one, and organized a month-long tour, sort of like you see rock bands do. And in fact, when I went over a few months before to video record the choir to make DVDs and CDs to sell at each concert to help raise money, I told the boys that I was going to make them rock stars in our churches. They kind of got a kick out of that.
Well, I mean, we might not be world famous, but we're famous in the eyes of our Lord. So I guess, in a way, they're all rock stars anyway.
Yeah, that's right. Right. So I set the tour up that we would go from church to church to church every single day, singing a concert in the evening, asking for donations. So there weren't tickets, anyone could come, and just asking for a free will offering. Have a reception afterwards so that all the parishioners could meet the seminarians. We asked the parishioners to put the boys up in their homes, again, allowing for more interchange with families and the people. And in parishes where they didn't have enough of that, we, found a hotel or a motel nearby that we could get economical rooms for all the guys. Next morning, have breakfast at the church, hopefully, served by the women, and actually breakfast after, sort of a brunch, but have a divine liturgy with the local priest. And some of the places actually commented, the pastor did to me, that we had more people show up for the church Slavonic liturgy on a weekday morning than he got on a regular Sunday.
Mm.
That tells you something. So anyway, we did, 25 or so churches in 30 days. The guys were singing 6 nights a week. And we would, after brunch at one church, we would then get into our minivans, drive on to the next church, have a light dinner in the parish, have the concert, and then go on to the next church the next day. And the first tour, the boys arrived, I think, at Newark Airport, and I think we came here to Washington. No, we went to Harrisburg first, and then made our way all the way to Chicago, and then looped around and came back through the Midwest, across northern Pennsylvania into the Northeast, into New Jersey, and then we finished here at my parish in Virginia, and then they flew home. The next year, they came and we started in New Jersey because there was a Slovak heritage um, event at a park in New Jersey. And the second concert tour was from the seminary in Prešov, so they were all Slovak guys. The first one was from Uzhhorod, where they were all Ruthenian, Ukrainian guys. And that was a bit of a challenge, the first one, because I had to get visas for everybody. And of course, this was before the Ukrainian war. Today, you probably couldn't get them even if I tried. But even back then, the boys all had to go for a personal face-to-face interview in Kiev, and that was a 14-hour train ride from Uzhhorod. So they went through an awful lot to get their visas in order to come on the trip. But it all worked out, and it was successful. We raised a good bit of money that I was able to send back to the seminaries. So the second tour was from Prešov, and then we did a third tour with the guys from Uzhhorod, and that was just before COVID, and now before the war. So everything's changed, and I'm glad we got those done when we did. But those now are an archive recording of Church Slavonic music, not only the liturgy, but we did hymns. I did one recording with one of them of nothing but folk songs. So it was a secular one, secular recording.
Where can I find this? This is a secular. Well, I mean, in general, where can the people find these? Because you've recorded them all, but also
yeah,
I want this folk album. I want this.
Yeah. I have to look. I'm not sure I've made the folk album available other than through a CD or DVD. But now, since the technology has gone past
I'll take
physical
the CD.
discs, yeah. Well, you can go to the OL Foundation website, and I think you can order the CD there. I'd have to double check if I put the folk songs there. I think we perhaps the only place, at least till now, the folk songs were at the concert venues that you could buy. They were like a supplement, that you had to be there to get it. But now I'll make a note, and we will try to get it onto the OLTV streaming site, which is oltv.tv, which is a subscription for just $4.95 a month. And you get access to all the OLTV videos that we've put there, and there's more coming. We can put the audio onto our future podcast.
Yes. Real
channel.
quick, speaking of the future of the podcast, those of you who are listening on YouTube podcast might already only see Jack's Corner as its own thing, but in the coming weeks we will be moving Jack's Corner to its own thing to consolidate and keep everything in an order so that if you're coming for the lectures, it won't be jarring to see or hear something go from this classic vintage sound to modern, better quality, I should say, or modern quality audio, just to give everybody an easier way to access without having to scroll so much. Just so people are aware that's coming down the pipeline.
Great. I'm looking forward to hearing all that, not seeing it, but hearing it.
We moved away from the video
Another,
form.
right. Another sort of channel or group of recordings that we made over the years are special liturgies. And they're all over the map in terms of scope and size and location, year, which church. And I'll just sort of throw out a couple of samples that come to mind quickly of the kinds of liturgies that I've been blessed to record over the years. Of course, the concert tour liturgies, when we did them with the choir in all the different churches, were kind of special. I've done a bunch of recordings at my own parish. So, for instance, about 11 years ago, when we built a brand new church, we went through the full weekend of services for the consecration of a brand new church, from the Vespers in the old church on the night before, the matins in the morning, all the services involved, and then the consecration with the blessing of the holy table and the insertion of mastic and the relics into it, the blessing and that was made of all the four walls of the church that are part of the ritual. So we followed the ritual to a T according to the Ruthenian recension, because my pastor is a bit of a liturgist. So we pulled out all the stuff, and I have it all on video. I had a couple of young guys from the church help me, and so they walked around with handy cams, and we put it all together and produced a whole weekend of the consecration of a church. Another special liturgy or set of liturgies, when you think of liturgy in the more expansive term of the whole office and not just a Eucharistic liturgy, I spent a weekend with a Romanian Greek Catholic monastery when they were located in California. And I video recorded their entire weekend of services, from Vespers and Matins and the hours, the Divine Liturgy. It was in the Romanian chant, but I believe it was all in English, conducted by the monks. So you got to, it's called A Weekend at a Monastery, is the title of the program. And so it gives you a bit of a sense of what a real monastic experience is like. One of the more popular videos, the most popular, I think, on our YouTube channel is actually just the first 8-minute clip of a liturgy that I recorded in Rome at the Basilica of St. Paul outside the walls for the year of St. Paul, which I think was in 2007 or 2008, with Patriarch Gregorius, the primate and head of the Melkite Greek Catholic Church worldwide. He had come in from Beirut, and he invited his whole synod to join him. They had a whole week of programs and events in Rome, one of which was the culmination of this Divine Liturgy. And again, they pulled out all the stops. They had the basilica filled. They used the full Divine Liturgy for a hierarchical liturgy, with Patriarch Gregorius as the main celebrant. And it was sung in a combination of Arabic and Greek, with the choir from the from the Greek College in Rome. The head of then it was called the congregation, now it's the dicastery for the Oriental churches. The cardinal in charge, Cardinal Daoud, was there. There were a couple other cardinals that were sitting there and attending, but the patriarch was there. And one of I set up 2 or 3 pre-positioned cameras, and handy cams are nice and small so they don't interfere with things. And if people don't know about them, sometimes they might even not know that they're there. And then I combine all those camera angles into one video. I went up early to the high place to the chair behind the altar, and I hit a camera behind the chair. And so one of the camera views is from the vantage point of the chair, looking at the whole expanse of the basilica. And then I walked around with one in a cassock and got special events like entrances and processions and that sort of thing. And then Holy Communion, all the people coming up. So anyway, it was that divine liturgy. And I think in 10 years, now pushing 15 years, that video has seen some 70 or 80,000 views.
I believe it's upward of 80 plus thousand. Yes.
80? Yeah. Which is amazing because it's only the 8-minute opening procession and litany. But that's one of my most, I think that's my most popular video, to have 80,000 views.
One of the liturgies are. It's definitely
Yeah,
a liturgy.
Yeah. I've also done a couple of special liturgies that I remember in the Uzhhorod area of Western Ukraine at Christmas time. I went on a Christmas pilgrimage when they were celebrating on the Julian calendar, which meant January 7th. They've now switched as of this year to the Gregorian calendar for fixed feasts, not for Easter. But the bishop, Milan Sashik of blessed memory, visited a village on Christmas Day. And it was a village where the Orthodox were given the church property when our church was, quote unquote, liquidated. And the Orthodox had the church in the underground period. But then after 1989 and the fall of communism, our church has resurrected itself and rebuilt. And in this particular village, the Orthodox have refused to give the property back to the Greek Catholics, who outnumber them. There are more Greek Catholics in that village than there are Orthodox. And it was a sad ecumenical event that I witnessed, in that the Orthodox were praying in their church, but the Greek Catholics had to have the Divine Liturgy out in the cemetery next door to the church. There was about 4 or 5 inches of snow on the ground, a light snow falling. It had to be in the 20s in terms of temperature. And we were out there in, heavy coats. The bishop had a big fur coat underneath his vestments, and he wore gloves the whole time, or most of the time, until he had to touch the holy vessels. They had to keep a cloth over top of the gospel book because of the snow falling. Mm-hmm. I called that Liturgy in the Snow, and I think it's gotten quite a few views on the YouTube channel. But it was, I can still vividly remember recording that particular one, that liturgy.
As heartbreaking as it probably was, that the church had to celebrate outdoors in the snow, I bet it was beautiful. In general, it must have been beautiful.
One aspect of it that I remember vividly was that the whole village of Greek Catholics gathered in their big overcoats and boots and fur hats. Were standing in a semicircle around the bishop at the altar, and they were singing the whole Divine Liturgy with the troparia included. Of course, Christmas troparia are very popular, but they sang the whole liturgy without a single book. Nobody had books. And everyone was singing with gusto in Church Slavonic, using the Prostopenia chant melodies of the Ruthenian Church. And I think the lead singer was a woman. And the women of the Ruthenian Church of the older days, and still today, sing with a very high-pitched nasal sound that's relatively distinct, but it's beautiful. It brought me back to my childhood, growing up in Duquesne, where the ladies would chant the rosary before every liturgy, and they had that sort of same high-pitched sound. The other disappointing thing that kind of gives an example of how much animosity there was still today, which was an education for me in terms of understanding why our people and our priests weren't so interested in ecumenism like I am. And that was because they're still having fights with the Orthodox. And on this particular occasion, it really brought it home to me that during the liturgy, the Orthodox were listening and watching and came out and rang the church bells during the great entrance so that the name of the Pope would not be heard. It was sad. And the church bells were on a mounted um, wooden frame on the ground outside the front door of the church. And so they were right next to where we were. So they were very, very loud. And then at the end of the liturgy, when the bishop brought the proclamation, a signed letter appointing the priest for the next calendar year as the pastor of that village, when he would start reading the letter, they would start ringing the bells. So the bishop just stopped and waited until they got tired of ringing the bells. And so when the bells stopped, he started reading the letter again. And they started ringing the bells again. And then we waited and waited. And when they stopped a second time, he started the letter again. And yet again, they start ringing the bells just to, and at the third time, when they stopped ringing, they finally walked back inside the church because they were cold. And the bishop very, very graciously yelled out at them, Christos Rosdaesia, which means Christ is born. So he was giving them a Christmas greeting as they walked back into the church. It was really sad to see.
It does also speak of the faith of the people who had to deal with it. You
right.
and the people
That's
there.
Yeah.
As this has got me upset, like hearing that much animosity was present during such an official event. I mean, like, I don't even go on social media other than to post, because reading the comments of people who don't want the unity gets under my skin. I'm like, what? He prayed for it.
Yeah.
Why are we so upset? Why are we upset about it? But
Well, and if people listen to what they pray in the Divine Liturgy, there's several places where there's a prayer for unity.
mm-hmm.
Uh, and so if you're authentic to your prayer,
Then this
then
should be something you want.
that's right. And I agree that the social media I don't even go look at them and read them. I certainly don't respond to them, and I just do my thing the way I feel the Holy Spirit's moving me.
Yeah.
And I hope someday those sorts of folks will also get inspired in the right way, in the quote unquote true believing way, which is the Orthodox way. If you translate Orthodox, it means right believing.
Yes.
Orthosia. Uh,
But
and so
like,
if they were to listen to their own prayers, they would, I think, have a very, very different attitude.
yeah. But I mean, like, just the beauty of the fact that you guys were all standing out in the cold with during the divine liturgy, and just waiting for that to stop to continue. Like, the fact of the beauty of the amount of faith that it took. Like, nobody's being martyred physically right then, but like the in a form of persecution. What really it makes me think of is just getting married. We went on our honeymoon, and it was a very cold. It was back out in Alaska, and we went to a divine liturgy for the feast day of the Presentation of Mary, and we were the two of us, my wife and I, were two of three people who showed up on this night, and I was like, doesn't that show how easy when there's not something that's like pushing against you to go to pushing against you to make your faith grow, how easy it can just fall away. And it's just like that was disheartening at that moment. I think it was a beautiful liturgy, and the priest's kids were all involved. And the fact that anybody else showed up was great. It was a small church, so I get it. It doesn't hold a lot. But, like, the fact that a whole village was outside for a divine liturgy when other people were just trying to stop you is absolutely beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. And the faith and the commitment and the courage of the bishop, to lead that and to finish what he came to do and to pray through all of that nonsense, I found very inspiring. He gave me an awful lot of hope that there are people in the world like him who, even though he's upset and he's dealing with the fact that he's got 50 villages just like that one where he can't get the church back. And so I think it was that trip or a subsequent trip when he and I were talking that he told me that he's given up trying to fight all of that in court, and instead he's raising money to build new churches in all those villages, just so that his people can have a place to worship. And I think in his 10 years as bishop before he suddenly died in his 50s, he built over 100 new churches throughout Transcarpathia.
Praise the Lord.
Because he needs them. There's so much faith that was underground, and now it's suddenly exploded. And he was the right person to be there to lead those people in that period of rebirth and just a resurrection. Some call it the resurrection of the church after being persecuted since World War II, really.
Persecution tends to do
70,
that.
80 years. Yeah. So back to our special events. I'll just mention a couple more that are somewhat related and somewhat similar. And that was that when Archbishop Savolatos Skopoulos, who was one of the founders of our Orientale Lumen Foundation and conferences and was a strong supporter through all the time that I knew him since about 1991 or 92. So for now 30 years, of course, he died he died before COVID, so 5-6 years ago. I was when it was announced that he passed, and I was talking to my mother in Pittsburgh that I couldn't get flights out of Washington or out of Pittsburgh to get to where the funeral was going to be in Chicago, and then the second part of the funeral and the interment was going to be in New Jersey, where the cemetery was, and all that. And my mother very, very graciously said, well, if you need to leave home on Christmas Day in order to get flights to go do that, you should do that because you were his spiritual son. You were his Catholic spiritual follower, and you should be there for everything. So I took that and executed it and went from Washington to Chicago to New Jersey and back to be at all the funeral services. And I had the presence of mind at the time to take my cameras with me. And so I set them up in the church in Chicago, and then